It's August 10th, 2023, in New York. Keeping an eye on what's going on through the television program. I started this morning with looking up like Quark in Queens came up. Um, So I'm in this federal note system with the United States, and in God we trust. So I've been writing some letters to dear in God we trust. I then, from the Hadron, being Quark in Queens, um, and knowing there's some charming someone my age out there, just somewhere. Um, I was looking through, I found two books. I went to the library. I went to the children's section of the library. Because again, this is like all beginners news to me. So I need like slow and steady terminology. Um, uh, I wasn't one of the fortunate few. Um, so I found Godspeed and Rocket Man. Um, I was looking for something to do with Smash. Um, and then I realized as I take these two books back home, my very humble beginnings started to make more sense in growing up Glenway. Um, does not make sense as to why I wasn't geared towards anything to do with astrophysics or aeronautics. I wasn't invited to that echelon like through school. It was very simplified school, which made it even more difficult when then like my dad was burdened with somebody else's kid who I didn't want to marry and whatever, but here we are and whatever. Um, Especially knowing at like that level of program. Like, and again, it's really obnoxious to me to sit in this point of discovery from on my own, um, and to think how many Super Bowls they've planned, they've had, they've completed, and like insurance companies they've built, movies they've created. And you mean to tell me, with all of this abundance of wealth and opportunity in planning and in speculation and in forecasting and prediction, you're going to tell me that humans didn't have one iota of interest in making sure that I was programmed the correct way and had the correct lifelong partnership with humans or with another God? In God we trust, considering I was having that mother son special timing piece in in whatever, that I made good on my piece. It's the partner that is now an issue. So there's that, and then so I'm just sitting here in my quiet, and I'm like, I really find it absolutely stupefying and insulting to even bring it up, because I know on somebody's schedule they knew they could have done more and done better for my one situation, and they chose not to. And that's what I don't understand why. So I'm going through the headlines and listening to what else is going on now in the year 2023. I read through the beginning of Rocket Man. And as I go through the pages and I look at the faces, um, more things come to light that I'm not going to mention. But it's just amazing Um, I found his name today, and then it was had something to do with Quark, which I found through some other TV with the heroes and icons, like the Deep Space Nine, whatever, had Quark. So I'm like, if there was a Quark in Queens, and I'm like, no, there was Quark in Suffolk. And then my body was moved to Queens. So again, there's a lot that I don't want to talk about, but it just seems so important in USA and being trapped here with this set of humans and what their capabilities and potentials are really frightening, and they haven't until now earned my trust.
And then you have a handful of states that have near total bans. So they don't even know what their stance is.
Right, and then it allows allows Democrats to define it if you don't know who and can't articulate who you are. We're seeing that polling play out. Ron DeSantis at 6 weeks is getting crushed with Republican women for Donald Trump, who realizes what this means. The flip side seems to be happening a little bit on crime, and Coulter sort of made this point, but I'd make it a little bit more directly that the mirror opposite of the abortion movement for Democrats is turning into defund the police and immigration. We've seen the Massachusetts governor now say, look, too many migrants are showing up. We don't have space. Well, welcome to Texas, you might say. And then now we've got a soft on crime, progressive, crime guy in D.C. on the city council now calling for the National Guard. Take a listen.
Now, this makes no sense to me. I mean, from my field observation, when I can leave the 8-foot ceilings that I'm in, and I walk on into the station, and I look, they put up a National Guard recruiting poster, which looks very much like the Dark Lord Amaral or some variation of that. It does not look familial to my genetic ancestry. So that got confusing. Then I watched Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. I watched episode 1, then I watched season 1, then I watched season 2. Now I'm up to season 3. Um and I'm through season 2, they were using this word national in a much different context that I had never heard before. And again, that's a flag pattern that's red and blue, but it's got a yellow in it, which is really confusing considering my area goes by the white. So, and then there's like a whole security package associated with those flags. So, again, I'm just taking security notes and analysis for my own well being and whatever. Just never sure, like, if somebody from, like, the actual Federal Reserve shows up, I'm doing my homework. I mean, I don't know what else to do at this point.
I know those who live here know that we are clearly.
But this is what they're calling national, and they're saying that he's reaching out for National Guard. I'm like, we're we're in federal note system. I went yesterday in my own trying to figure out what happened to the world while I was held like safely at the Glen, but now my body's been moved to Queens, and there's some concern, or there has been for many, many moons now, but whatever. On it's amazing how they can plan a Super Bowl, but they still have yet to get my life right. Um, so there's that. So I walked into something called a Vicky Palladino's office. She was on video at my son's elementary graduation. She was not there, but I spoke to one of the humans at the desk in her office, and I just asked, I'm like, like, what was your education level growing up? I mean, like, I grew up in New York, but again, like, and I had to even ask him, like, he told me senators, they collect the intelligence at the governor's office for senators, Congress people go to the mayor. And I'm like, that's really helpful. God, I didn't even get that level of education going through the public school systems here. So something's afoot, which doesn't smell right, that they're withholding. But he did say that, like at regents level, I remember that part. We had to pass our regents with this U.S. That they just like acknowledge and put on states that they existed, but there was no like civics course. There was none of that integrated into the school systems. Don't know why. Um, and so, and I said to him, I was like, what's going on? Like, I thought maybe it was just a Suffolk County thing, but now I'm back in the city and they're still not teaching like the locals. Like, I didn't even know how to find the local Congress person or like how it's even structured. Like, how are they keeping people safe if they're not even constructing basic governmental? He's like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, it's like federal is still being taught, but the local civics is not being taught. I'm like, any reason why that you can think of? And he's like, no. He's like, I haven't figured it out. I'm like, right, yeah, me neither.
Clearly in a war zone. Absolutely. I'm gonna say it again. We are clearly in a war zone.
I mean, I would add prison abolition to that list of policies liberal Democrats have pushed for that are very unpopular too. But on the immigration issue, I think what's strange for Democrats is, a lot of candidates in the 2020 primary, I think every single candidate on one of the debate stages raised their hand and said, we will welcome migrants with open arms, taxpayer funded benefits. Yes, we're okay with that. But now that the administration is in control, they
taxpayer benefits. Wait a minute. So you mean someone outside, like they're, so she's talking about somebody is actually openly accepting foreign investment for foreign invasion? Because that's what it sounds like when I break it down, and I'm like, what have you all been like with all of your scholar and like thesis writing and like importance in when you go out with each other? Like, what did you do to the world? Seriously. And it's like I'm just trapped under the rubble.
Tooth and nail in court to preserve Trump era policies, to expedite deportations, to refuse people asylum, and work permits are nowhere to be found for a lot of these migrants. So that's not a clear message either, and crime absolutely falls into that category.
And for me, I worry about tax collector and challenging other people's tax collectors and then what they're doing with the fund money credits. I mean, like, this speaks to a whole nother world at Federal Reserve that are super serious business persons that I don't want to get on the wrong side of. And then when I moved to Cuomo, which is E158, that was Leland Vittert 158. Cuomo has this, I mean, like, again, puts on something about turtles in the basement one day, and now he's talking about he nabbed like a big tuna in like, and calling, and the boat's name says Captain. He's calling himself Captain Jack. And I'm just like,
there's something you never hear. Bill O'Reilly saying there's nothing more to say. I would have rather heard what I had to say. But I will say. Two things.
Wait, I have one more little surprise for you. I'm gonna run. I'm gonna run. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm gonna run out of time. We got one more surprise, guys. The other surprise. Can you bring it, please? Quick. Where are you? You and what a good friend you are to so many people. I wish, honestly, that a lot of people treated you the same way.
One, Dusty, I wouldn't be doing this without you. You are
Then on Eyewitness News at 4, they bring on the asylum crisis yet again. Over the last few days, I've been taking photos of the TV as the local eyewitness crew or CBS crew or news station is making note of some of the participants in finding money, finding routes of like for these migrants as they come in. I don't know where they're coming in from. I don't know who's affording them, but this large, substantial demographic change is really concerning. And especially considering it's unannounced. It looks like an invasion. Or like some unlawful occupation. I don't know, is the words come up like human trafficking and human smuggling. And they're clearly stating how they're organized and what funding whatever they're using. So I'm just snapping photos of it and like submitting it to the Facebook investigators because I know like there's a job of like people that may never sleep. I don't really know. It's a 24-hour business. It's not my preferred method, but since humans really don't exist when I go out these days.
On the efforts to house and take care of all the migrants in New York City.
We're now getting a first look inside the center set up at a hangar at Kennedy Airport. This just one way the city is trying to take care of the tens of thousands of migrants coming here. Tonight, however, city council members are putting officials on the hot seat. This as Mayor Adams meets with a senior advisor to the president.
Eyewitness News reporter Anthony Carlo live at City Hall with the very latest.
So now New York is able to speak with the White House, it sounds like, and they're working something out with whatever the crisis is inside New York.
Anthony.
David, Sandra, this meeting between a senior advisor to President Biden and Mayor Adams comes a day after Mayor Adams said this crisis would cost New York City $12 billion over the next few years. The mayor's chief of staff says this discussion about a very complex issue is one that involves a number of things, including now a new policy to make more than 900 migrants move out of the city's shelter system to make room for others.
I don't want to throw migrants into an unfamiliar pool of water and hope that they can swim. I want to know that they can swim.
It appeared as though they didn't even have life vests by the looks of the Roosevelt Hotel just a week ago. The intake center overflowed with asylum seekers desperate for shelter. The city now limiting shelter stays for adult migrants to 60 days to free up critical space for families and children. A new policy drawing pushback from city council committees today.
Who determined that this was the way to go? Was this a collective?
We do not want anyone sleeping on our streets. And if the council walks away with anything today, I hope it's that understanding.
Today, a first look at an unused hangar at Kennedy Airport, now being used for emergency shelter.
This is a complicated issue for everyone all around.
Mayor Adams, chief of staff, on the mayor's meeting today with a senior advisor to President Biden. The city continuing to ask for federal help, including a decompression strategy at the border.
There are different ways to get resources to New York City as we continue to manage this humanitarian crisis, and we were happy to have the opportunity to speak with him about the ways that we think the federal government can help us.
All they're asking is, give me...
So it sounds like, if I'm interpreting this correct, they don't have federal approval. The state is somehow operating on its own and like allowing this transfer to like I'm not quite, because like I mean, again, they didn't ask me, they haven't allowed me into their conversations. Like I don't even know where I fit on the spectrum or scale. I just know I was sent to the Red Cross when I was growing up Glenn, and that's all I know.
A job.
Today, lawmakers also toured the Roosevelt Hotel, putting the onus on the Biden administration to expedite work permits so the city does not have to resort to shelter time limits. Since late July, 913 notices have been sent out to migrants who've been in the city's care for more than 60 days. If they don't find alternative housing, they have to reapply at the Roosevelt Hotel.
60 days is not an acceptable number, nor a number that the Congresswoman or I stand by to say that you have 60 days to stay in the city or get out.
And now, of course, the concerns here are that the city has a right to shelter and that this new policy will result in more homelessness. But city officials say if there's a significant number of migrants out on the streets, they will adjust their policies here. Going on to say that out of the more than 900 migrants who have received these notices, more than 65% of them have talked with the city, talked with their caseworkers, and said they're willing to work on an exit strategy to deal with this immediate need. We're live at City Hall. Anthony Carlo, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Anthony, thank you. Breaking news.
And so, like, that's going on. Then on CBS this morning, they're complaining and really upset with how corporate America is working with venture capital funds and this non-share, like, and I'm like, I'm concerned at, like, smashing particles, no ability to write a thesis, not even sure where to turn one in if I knew how to communicate at that level. I drew one thesis, and that was for Walt Disney. And that was, I mean, like, that was all that they offered me to write thesis on. And then it's like the whole world just disappeared. They only planned for themselves. And even though in star positioning, I have symmetric, I mean, at clocks, this is very important, but it just doesn't seem like to the Americans or to the United States or to federal or New York, it just doesn't seem to be a priority or that anybody cared since I arrived. Here's E159. And when I hear just how far, like, because, like, I'm inside New York City, I can see on the news they've done Black History Months, they've done all of the progress, like how far they've come when they speak of slavery, like that they were in chains and dirt, and like just like now they're multi-million-dollar rappers and sports figures and scientists and aggressive, scary, aggressive lawyers and things inside this system. I don't know who licensed them at the Bar Association, but and it just seems very like persona non grata if I look at them with how have they used their gifts. It seems to like enrich themselves and all the while taking advantage of part of the federal system. And it doesn't seem like teamwork. It seems very destructive.
Over diversity in business. It involves the Fearless Fund, which is the first venture capital fund built by women of color for women of color. According to the fund, just 0.39% of venture capital funding goes to businesses started by women of color. The Fearless Fund was founded in 2019 to help close that gap by providing funding and support to Black female founders.
And now it's facing a lawsuit by the American Alliance for Equal Rights. That's a group founded by the conservative activist who was behind the effort to end affirmative action in college admissions. Now, this suit alleges that the fund's Fearless Strivers Grant Contest is, quote, their words, a racially discriminatory program that blatantly violates the Civil Rights Act's guarantee of race neutrality because its $20,000 grant prizes are only open to Black women. We are joined now by Fearless Fund co-founder and CEO. Her name is Arian Simone. This is her first interview since the lawsuit was filed.
And they chose a woman who goes, their CEO uses the name Arian, which again, when they tell the story of the Holocaust, it just seems very racially motivated, very racially charged when bringing forth the story and picking this particular CEO to represent their cause. especially with some of the things that have gone on locally where I've been taken out of the home, like really frightening things.
Against your company. Good morning to you, Ariane. Good to have you here at the table.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So what was your first thought when you heard that you and your partners were being sued?
My initial thought, I didn't think that this was real, but once I realized that it was, I was aware that it was definitely an attack to dismantle and address our economic freedom as people of color. But I knew the moment it happened that we would continue to do the amazing work that we do.
Now, they're reporting this and airing this in New York airspace, like at FCC level and FTC level, in a federal system where this is the federal face of the reserve, during a period where I've been harmed repeatedly. This is what's being aired, and how they're speaking about it.
You didn't think it was real. What did you think it was? What did you think?
When the emails came through, I honestly thought it was ChatGPT.
You did?
Yeah.
You thought maybe you were being punted.
Yes.
So now that you know that it is real, what's your response? What are you all planning to do?
Oh, our response is simple. We plan to continue to do the work that we do for women of color. As you stated before, women of color are the most founded entrepreneurial demographic. They are just the least funded.
Why do you think that is? I mean, when I read the number, Arian, I thought I was reading it wrong because the number was so low. Less than 1%.
Yes, fraction of a percent.
Yes.
I think even beyond racism and sexism, there is something called proximity. The investors in the venture capital field, 92% of them are white male. I'm a strong believer that if we can diversify the investors, we can diversify the investments.
So that sounds like they're trying to destroy the government of the Federal Reserve note, of their family practices, of the way they conduct their business. Again, this just seems like a dangerous, at national security, it seems like my analysis, it seems like a dangerous practice to allow something like that. I mean, like, these are people who are actively saying that their goal is to break down and destroy the safety features and measures that are there, that, I mean, me at the bottom, I'm not even receiving the level of care that I need, nor have I been given the same level of opportunity in these lands during the time frame that I've been here, that this has been growing. And then there's something that went on within the residence as well, which is this whole involuntary removing me from the house and sticking me in facilities, with that type of group claiming to be doctors, for which I don't recognize them as doctors, only because of how they've hurt me repeatedly and then tried to give me a record that I never had earlier, but down this really dangerous path, all while forcing me, like, there's been like no removal of Tiafrio 1975. Like, he's been blacksmithed somehow into my life, and I can't seem to get him. I filed papers, whatever. But again, he's just this burden now that seems to be burdening my father that my father doesn't need. But here we are. And now I see that this new UFO whistleblower, like this very respectable man who was able to, or at least so the television is showing, who was able to actually get into the Air Force. Like, I wasn't even able to find my way into the Air Force, and for some reason the Air Force didn't find their way to me. I guess they were just busy. I don't know what, like, how they explain that to one another. In God we trust. And so I'm watching this, and I'm like, and I'm listening how that's what they've done to me, and they've obviously done it to somebody else, where they go after to try to give you a mental disease or make you seem like you are mental, when clearly there are other things going on, other factors that are going on. I live in a very highly volatile area at this point. There's a high ozone particulate. I'd never know the air quality and what's in that air, but it sticks on the clothes. It sometimes makes my lips incredibly white. Low levels of oxygen. I've had to have a blood transfusion out of nowhere. No idea why, but there's been some real serious health concerns in New York as of the last few years since they moved my body back to Queens. And not that my body was doing well. I mean, I went to Maple Avenue. I know that now rings a new bell. And then I went to the corner of West Row and Monroe, because I don't know what Wade means in Deadpool. But that happened. And so I wasn't doing well the later years there, but I was still with the blacksmith, being burdened by him. I don't know how to unburden myself of this person.
We're getting some new information on the UFO whistleblower and his history of struggling with mental illness. Chris spoke last night with investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Here's some of that interview.
When I asked him whether there was any dirt that anybody could drag out to try to discredit him, he barely thought this was worth mentioning, but he acknowledged that he'd suffered from PTSD. The intelligence community and the Defense Department clearly accepted that there was no issue because he was allowed to keep his security clearance.
Okay, so Chris, I guess there's two issues here. One is the issues that the whistleblower has had in the past, and then two, why all of a sudden we're learning about them now, and The Intercept got, I guess you could, what did you say, opposition research sort of got dumped all of this information.
So you have how and why, okay? My concern about how was that it came from the government. The Intercept says, no, we filed a FOIA request. Now, Dave Grush has said through Ross to us and in our independent reporting today that he spoke to authorities involved in the office and that he was led to believe that nobody had made a FOIA request. Maybe they got it wrong, and the Intercept did file a FOIA request, and that's how they got the information. Fine. In the Intercept's piece, they also talk about speaking to a colleague of his. Well, what colleague would know about his health records? And, you know, because the idea that right after he testifies, all of a sudden you just decide to look up a 2018 incident at this one office, you know, out of nowhere, like, you know, can you imagine ever doing that without somebody prompting you?
No,
So
yeah, somebody took the
how.
Intercept off, right? Somebody took the
That's the
Intercept
how.
off. Right. Okay.
That's the how.
But now, here's the thing. Real names, real field people. When I was working at Chase, I was invited to, I was doing small business banking, and I was invited by a mortgage banker and somebody else, after, like, to meet, because they have small businesses. Oh, a business insurance broker, because they have small businesses, and that's what they said to do. So that's what I did, and I was used to that from real estate with networking, and it was close to the branch. And it was Carol and Leon. Those are the two whatevers and whatever for locals put in my path. So what I don't understand is, at that point, there was no Tia Frio 1975. And if that's what they were planning on doing, from like almost like a baton handed from Falco to Tia Frio 1975 in some blacksmith way, I don't understand why Intercept wasn't then. I mean, like, Eric from World Gym already popped in and knew. I mean, I was trying to maintain, like, body is my temple sort of a thing, best I could at that point. That would have been a really, like, nifty way to, like, fix so I didn't go into this other category of World of Hurt, which I don't feel out of, but I don't know. And again, like that's more like a hadron and a particle collider, like whatever in quantum particle physics of explaining it. But it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.